All right. So far with voltaic cells, we've been discussing wet cells with the 2 beakers and the salt bridge. Let's talk about dry cells, because this is something you are actually probably more familiar with. But dry cells are still spontaneous voltaic reactions. All right. They're set up a little bit differently. They don't have, liquid water in them like the wet cells do. So, you are familiar with voltaic cells, particularly voltaic dry cells, whenever you have used something that is operated with a battery. Now, technically speaking, when we refer to, one of these, like one of these AAA or AA batteries, really, it's a AA dry cell. Batteries are when you have multiple of them together. And, a lot of times when you put, Duracell or alkaline batteries and stuff like that into devices, a lot of times you need more than one. But I've had clickers and things like that only require one. So technically speaking, a dry cell is the single one. When you have many of them combined together, that's a battery. So, this is just dry cell information. So, a difference between your dry cells and your wet cells is a dry cell is kept together in one compartment. However, the reactions are still separated from each other. All right? A voltaic cell won't work unless you can separate the two reactions. So there's, in here, you got your outside, which is generally a metal casing, often zinc, and that's where your anode will occur. All right, so the zinc on the outside is what's going to give up some electrons. And then there's going to be this layer of cardboard on the inside that separates that metal outer anode from the inner reduction reaction, things like that. All right, so dry cells are one compartment, but the reactions are still separated, usually by a cardboard separator. They are much, much smaller than wet cells. All right, a real life example of a wet cell, although I'm not sure they are actually still this way, but those of you that have ever worked on, old cars with old batteries, where you actually could pop open and see the different, like there were usually 6 compartments, and sometimes you had to add water to them. Car batteries are wet cells. The things that you put in, remote controls and things like that, or calculators, or really even the battery that is inside your computer or your phone, those are all dry cells. All right, so anode is on the outside. It's the metal casing. What kind of reaction takes place on the anode? Leo. All right, so talking a little bit more about your dry cell. All right, the cathode on a dry cell actually isn't metal. It's a carbon rod that goes through the center of the battery. All right, so carbon and graphite. Graphite is just another name for carbon. All right, and this is a little bit different. The reduction reaction doesn't actually take place on the cathode because it's not metal, so that wouldn't work. Instead, the cathode is surrounded by a paste that has a dissolved metal in it that can be reduced. All right, so that paste tends to be, MnO2, zinc chloride, ammonium chloride, potassium hydroxide, all right? And these all contain a positive ion that can pick up those electrons. Or there's such a thing as an air battery, where the air in there, the oxygens will pick up the electrons. So, good piece of information to probably take some notes on. All right. Dry cells are in the same container. Wet cells have their half reactions in completely separate containers. The anode is the zinc cup, or you can even say casing. Whereas in a wet cell, if it was a piece of zinc acting as your anode, it would be a strip of zinc metal. Cathode is that graphite rod. The wet cell is going to be the metal of low activity. You could also say here metal high activity. It doesn't have to be zinc. All right. Your electrolytes are coming from a paste in the dry cell, which has limited water, whereas in the wet cells, those electrolytes are dissolved in a bunch of water. All right. For both of them, oxidation's at the anode, reduction is in the paste for the dry cell, but on the cathode for the wet cell. And then there's a bridge or a separator between them. That's that cardboard in the dry cell and the salt bridge in wet cell. So again, take some notes on this.